What? Sarah Boone waited exactly 4 days to write a letter that was uploaded yesterday, the 11th of December, into her case file, which I'm assuming is still open since the appeal process has to be completed. I was I was surprised. I was honestly expecting a letter from Sarah once she had been assigned her appeal attorney and there would be a new judge and all new people to victimize, but no, she couldn't even let her horrible quote unquote apology slash statement at sentencing be the last word. That was not enough for her because the statement she gave was an edited version, as we recall her reiterating multiple times. So she made sure we all had the full version, and it is unhinged. So here we are again. And we knew Sarah Boone would not go away quietly. But this, I was watching Tanika's 2 cents while she went over some of it, and it just, my mouth dropped. I cannot believe that she put all of this in writing in a letter that was uploaded to her file that is never going away. She did that. And in a lot of ways, I think she is her own worst enemy. So we're going to look over some of this. I'm not going to reread the parts that she actually stated in court. Even though every time I listen to it, I hear something else stands out to me that just is like, Sarah, why? But no, I think we've had enough of that. I'm just going to read the additional parts. So here we are. December 6th, 2024. There's her case number. Mr. Michael Kraynick. She did not address him as Judge Michael Kraynick. She addressed him as Mr., and I think that was purposeful. Someone in the comments of another video I was watching pointed that out, and yeah, she has no respect for anyone. I am in closing, please. I hate the way she says please, please, like a little child. I am in closing, please, my complete statement to you and the world as I partially read during my sentencing hearing. By my reserving particular parts of my very true to who, Sarah? True to you? Okay. Well, in the words of your detective, Chelsea Copsall, that never happened. Okay. I loved how she responded to that. She looked right at the jury. That never happened. Okay. Sorry. My very true and meaningful statement. I was hoping to have been graced with your forgiveness, understanding, and consideration in any level or degree. For me, unfortunately, and regardless of whom I had speak on my behalf or the number of, your ignorant mind was already made up. Okay, already, there's just a headache of stuff to digest. I want to think that she's just sitting back laughing at us, reading and like paying so much attention to her, and that she doesn't really mean all this, but there's no way that she would be that self-destructive for a good laugh. So she called the judge ignorant. It was obvious his mind was already made up. What did she think? She was going to be graced with his forgiveness, so he was just going to reverse the jury's verdict and be like, you can go back and take the plea deal, but she wouldn't have even taken that. And I still don't think she would take it because, like Owen said, then she would have to admit and accept the term of manslaughter or murder or whatever the plea deal had attached to it. This is unhinged. By your clear error and full-blown unfair bias against me since your involvement in my crucible case as a whole, I have been unsuccessful in receiving anything from you as a supposed fair and neutral judge, except for your wish that I spend the rest of my life in prison. I'm sorry, what does it affect him either way? What she does with the rest of her life? It doesn't affect him. It has, like, if she spends life in prison, if she spent the 15-year plea deal, Judge Kraynick doesn't care. He doesn't sit there and, like, connive what each person that comes through his courtroom, what sentence they're going to get. He's not doing that. He's doing his job. He's listening to the evidence. He listened and watched all your evidence. He read all your letters. He was very patient with you. Her reality is just, I guess she's from outer space. Please know and always remember, Mr. Kraynick. Here she is again with the Mr. I forgive you. Sarah, you don't forgive anybody. This is not what forgiveness is, where you just like write these rant letters to people and make silly speeches and say, but I forgive you. You did all these things to me, but I forgive you. Okay, that's not how you forgive people. Sometimes you don't even tell them you forgive them. You just do it in your heart for yourself and you move on and let it go. That's how I forgive. If you need to discuss something with the person to move forward, fine. But if not, sometimes I'm just like, I'm going to let that go. And I move on with my life. And guess what? I don't write a 28-page or a 58-page letter and send it to them detailing everything that they did. But again, please know and always remember, Mr. Kraynick, I forgive you. Still and sincerely, please understand also, the judge, according to Cicero, is never to lose sight that he is simply a man. Here she is reducing everyone else around her, and that he cannot exceed the power given to him by his commission, that not only power but public confidence has been given to him, that he ought always very seriously to attend not to his wishes, but to the requisitions of law, of justice, and religion. And then I'm not sure. This is something Latin. Cis pro cluentis. I butchered that, I'm sure. I don't know if it's her handwriting or if it's the Latin. I'm not sure what that is. Okay, so I Googled it. This is a quote she took from a speech by Cicero. It's called Pro Cluentio. I couldn't exactly tell by the way she wrote it, but it's a speech by the Roman orator Cicero given in defense of a man named Aulus Cluentius Habitus Minor. I butchered that, I'm sure. We all know Sarah was in the Latin club and she is very smart. We all know that. So she's, of course, showing that off here. I did not know what that was. I'm just being honest, but I Googled it. So there you go. Okay, moving on. So that is, okay, here we are. I am excited in my appeal, which speaks for itself. My case law as well, in which I am extremely proud to have achieved. What case law did she achieve? Is she saying her case, like when her case goes into like case study, that she achieved that somehow? No, the prosecutors and your defense attorneys had to do the whole trial. What does she think she achieved? So now that I am no longer in your corrupt court and free from your malevolent judicial grip. Oh, Sarah. This is on record for any future judge to look at during her appeal. Like any other judge, they're going to see all these letters that she wrote to Wooten, to Kraynick. They can probably see her family law case, that she's written letters to that judge. What's the common denominator, Sarah? All the judges, the entire judicial system in Florida, every detective, all the police that came to the scene of the crime, all the lawyers, everything. It's not, the common denominator is you, Sarah. You have a problem with everyone else because you're a problem. So here we are, Sarah Boone versus state of Florida. Yep, that's what she was referencing, her case. She's so proud of it. That's sad. It's sad that you're proud of this because it was a complete circus. I also have added, and may I add, it was a circus because of her. She made it a circus. Oh, I need snacks. I need hair and makeup. I can't get along with anyone. I need special shoes. That was ridiculous. I also have added to my statement, as a result of your blindness and impartiality. Wait, if you're impartial, that means you're fair. Being impartial means you're not like leaning one way or the other. So what is she? So she just said that he was corrupt, and now she's saying he has blindness and impartiality? Impartial. Am I missing something? Impartial. I don't know. Foremost, your disgust in me as being an outspoken woman, determined defendant, and proactive client. Hoping the next time you put on your listening ears. Are you really talking to him like a kindergartner right now? And do not unfairly oppress the next as you have so blatantly done to me. You will never admit your many judicial errors. Yeah, Sarah, just like he didn't make any, number one, but just like you will never admit your errors. You guys have something in common now, according to you. Nor will the prosecutors theirs. What errors did they make? I guess we'll hear in her appeal. And I will never admit to what you have wrongfully accused me of and judged me as. First of all, Judge Kraynick didn't accuse her of anything. He was just assigned to hear the facts of her case. And it's not wrong when it happened. And you are now convicted. I am not a murderer. I am a survivor. Sarah Boone. Okay, well, you've been convicted as a murderer, so. Oh, wow, now she's giving us definitions again. Black robe disease. So now she's saying the judge has a disease. Arrogance in a judge, a slang term for a judge who flaunts judicial power and dominates proceedings at the expense of the disposition of justice. I didn't see any of that. He was not arrogant. He did not flaunt any power. I guess she perceived it that way when he set a boundary or made a final statement or ruling, but that's his job. He listens and then he makes a ruling based on case law, based on the law. That's what a judge does. It was not at the expense of the dispensation of justice. It was just that you didn't like it. Oh, Sarah, impartiality is the first duty of a judge. But you just said he was impartial earlier. Did you mean partial? I don't understand what she's trying to say. Before he gives an opinion or sits in judgment in a case, a cause, he ought to be certain and absolute that he has no bias for or against either of the parties. If he has any inherent, even the most slightest, in the cause, I guess it's cause, he is disqualified from sitting as a judge, and when aware of such interest, ought to lawfully and justly refuse to sit on a case. The delicacy which characterizes the judges in this country generally forbids their sitting on such a cause. Okay, yes, that's called recusing yourself. Conflicts of interest, same thing, same kind of questions they ask the jury. Can you be impartial and fair in listening, or have you been, already persuaded one way or the other, like she claims all of her jury pool was, because everybody's just sitting around watching YouTube videos about Sarah Boone all day in Orange County, right? There can't possibly be an impartial jury, according to her, because of court TV and YouTube. What is his supposed conflict of interest? The judge must not only be impartial, but must also follow and properly enforce the law, not abuse. He is bound to declare what law is and not make it. Be not an arbitrator, but an interpreter of the law. He did that. It is their duty to be patient in the investigation of the case. I think he was more than patient. It took 4.5 years for this to go to trial. Understand circumstances and difficulties by all parties, careful in considering parts of a case in whole, and decent in judgment. Beauvair Law Dictionary. So now you're pulling things out of a 2012 edition of a law dictionary. And I could have pronounced that wrong. I'm not a lawyer. Now you're pulling things out of a law dictionary and explaining to the judge how to be a judge. That's what this page was. You're explaining to a judge how he should be a judge. A judge who went to college and law school and passed the bar and spent years practicing as a lawyer before becoming a judge. You're telling them how they should be a judge. You have no experience being a judge. Well, you are judgmental, but you don't have any experience being a judge. But you're telling them, look, there's more. She's listing more. But at the risk of practicing judicial centricism, oh my God, all the quotation marks. You have quotation after quote in. When you put quotation marks inside of quotation marks, you're supposed to use the single ones, but okay, I can't with her. Judicial centricism, a word I have coined in this presentation. Oh, you made this up. That's why it's in quotation. Okay. Others have called it black robe disease, yes, which you defined for us. Whether he was correct or not in my behavior, it is widely accepted that judicial behavior affects the jury. Murray Ritchell, the Simpson trial. You're quoting something from the Simpson trial? 1996. Okay. And then there's the worst of judicial ailments, the black robe disease, which is otherwise known as arrogance. Lynn Toller, A Practical Guide to Becoming an Emotional Genius, 2007. Sarah, you read a book called A Practical Guide to Becoming an Emotional Genius? I highly doubt that. I highly doubt you read that book. Because you're the farthest thing from that. Trial judges are affirmatively charged with securing a fair trial and must intervene sua sponte to that end when necessary. Brown v. Walter, blah, 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 1993. That jury encompasses not only the avoidance of error before it occurs, but the fair correction of error that may have occurred earlier in a proceeding. Carlisle v. United States, 1996. In the instant case, the trial judge did not analyze the evidence he added to it, dealing with a more mannerism of the accused in giving his testimony. The judge put his own experience with all the weight that could be attached to it in the scale against the accused. I'm not sure how to say that. Alarica v. United States, 1933. Wow, way back. So, does she think she's doing something with this? I guess she's very adamant that she has a strong appeal. I guess she thinks she's doing something listing because Judge Kraynick, and to be fair, he always said, where's the case law? Where's the evidence? You can't just tell me you feel this way, you think this. Where's the case law? So to be fair, she did put some case law in there. So I guess she learned something. Slightly. And then she goes in with her Kentu Sukaroi, she pronounced it. And I've heard that's not the way you pronounce it. And this was all plagiarized from a book about positive thinking. Just a lazy gamer posted a snippet of this exact page that she took it from. And then she goes on to her statement we heard in court about her imaginary job and all the grievances everyone made to her, what forgiveness is, which she is still confused about, all the things George did that she talked about. Oh, poor Sarah, she's the victim. He was just an alcoholic and he forced her to drink with him and she never wanted to drink, but somehow he forced her to ingest alcohol. She couldn't get away from him. And then what his brother did, which has nothing to do with her case. She forgives the Torres family. Social media, we're all scoundrels. We didn't commit any unalivings, did we? That's why we're out here, able to use our freedom of speech and give our opinions and our constitutional rights, which we are utilizing, that we have. All right. Blah, blah, blah. No one knows her. No one knows her. We know enough. If you see my short, Sarah Boone is a survivor. Yeah, the end it says, no, we don't know you, but we know enough. All right, your gold. Okay, here's where she starts talking about her prior attorneys. I guess Owens told her that's gonna, like, he edited this out. I'm assuming he told her don't say this, which is why she looked like a pouty, petulant toddler when he was pointing to things and crossing them out. And she sat there with her arms crossed. Well, I want to say all of this. Okay. I'm assuming that's what he was doing. But he said, we don't have time for you to go over all your other attorneys. That's not relevant to your sentence. It's also not going to do you any favors. All right. So then she talks about Mauricio Padillo sold her the world with empty promises and abandoned his responsibilities as my attorney after taking 2.5 years of my life. He didn't take that time of your life. When finally realizing he was in over his head, he wasn't in over his head. If you go to his website, he has a lot of high profile trials that he has defended people in, and he probably was doing it for the notoriety. And when he could not reason with you, he quote unquote abandoned you, which meant withdrew. And he was hoarding JAC dollars to fund his staycations with his family. No, he came in town. He filed rightfully for travel expenses because he is from Miami. Blah. She is just... I'm exhausted. We're on what, page 13? 9? This says 9. The court says 13. This is a lot. Okay, so Padilla was horrible because he used the JAC funds for travel expenses and represented you pro bono for 2.5 years. Okay. And he went to water parks. Okay, well, if he's up here for work, he's not going to work 24 hours a day. You know, how many of us have traveled for work, and then when our work conference or whatever we were attending was over, we went to dinner, we maybe did some sightseeing. That's allowed. And you don't know how he paid for that because you weren't there. You weren't allowed to go because you're in jail. I forgive Frank J. Bakowitz for committing perjury to the judge. Wow. Now she's just flat out saying perjury and that they lied. And on court record about my attempts to be a proactive defendant and client. So what she calls proactive. We all know what that means. Inquiring about my discovery, you mean harassing and constantly calling him so he can't get anything done. Then trying to communicate with no answers or correspondence in any manner for 1 full year and 2 months before I was able to finally meet with him in the courtroom, only to receive his motion to withdraw. Frank J. Bakowitz is forgiven for his greed in taking $15,000 from the JAC, who honorably aid indigent defendants as myself. Yeah. You know who honorably aided you, Sarah? The taxpayers of Florida gave the JAC all that money that they have. That's from taxpayers like Frank J. Bakowitz. I bet he pays his taxes. They didn't take anything from you. You're not a taxpayer. You're in jail and you weren't working. So... here we go. Taking advantage of and robbing the justice system by lying and avoiding clients taking their money and the JAC's. So he lied, he avoided you, and then he took your money. You didn't pay him anything. Hobson receives my forgiveness, who also unethically perjured himself to the judge and on court record about all the progress and attorney work he did in my case for the 2 months he was court appointed as for his allegations of my supposed unethical requests, which meant me asking about my discovery and trying to have him file a motion for my lawful inclusion to my pretrial conferences cited under FRCP discovery. Rule 3.220. I want it to be included in my case, and no progress from being excluded by Bakowitz and Padilla over 3 years prior. I wanted something and I didn't get it. Okay, so if a lawyer's telling you something is unethical, it probably is. You need to listen to your attorneys when they're telling you something is unethical, because you might not see it that way, but the court will. And they're trying to tell you, this is not allowed. I am not legally allowed to do this. The court will not appreciate. And if they find out that we did this, then we'll both be in trouble. And a lawyer's not going to risk their license for you to do what you want. I wanted. Forgiveness also in telling me he would return in a week with my discovery, only to receive his motion to withdraw in the meantime, still not receiving my discovery, and I filing my own motion, enabling me to go to all my hearings, including my pretrials. Oh, congratulations for doing that. Continued forgiveness in his greed and selfish intentions, also for robbing the JC and indigent defendants of $15,000 more for nothing, justifying any work he really did do in the handful of days he represented me as my attorney. You don't know what work he was doing, how many copies he had to make, how many things he had to read. You don't know. Just because he wasn't in the jail face to face with you, wasting his time listening to your instructions that were unethical and not allowed in court, doesn't mean he wasn't working. And he didn't rob anyone. The judge listened to the attorneys and ruled in their favor. Another judge that made bad decisions, Sarah, yet again. Finally, with all my gold received from this one, I forgive Patricia A. Cashman for her mean, snotty, egotistical attitude and not listening or caring that I finally received my discovery I kept asking for, which she fully withheld from me. Citing her ridiculous, untrue reasons was because I saw with my first attorney 4 years prior, and while she, being my present at that time attorney, I saw not one page of or any digital evidence of my discovery, she prohibited me from seeing. So, Sarah, you don't like strong women? I thought you were just complaining about the judge not liking you because you were a strong woman advocating for yourself. I think Patricia was very nice. I have never personally worked with her, but I think she was just telling you, this is what's important. This is what's going to go well in court. She's trying to tell you, like your previous attorneys, that's not ethical. We're not going to lie on the stand like you did. But again, you didn't see eye to eye with her or any attorney. I wonder if she's going to throw Owens under the bus now. If we're going to hear a bunch of slander about him, even though he worked his butt off. Patricia A. Cashman is also forgiven for admitting I had a right to a bond I asked her for, so I could actually utilize one of my rights as opposed to having them always violated as prior and still ongoing. Then her deterrence of all my opportunities to do so, for all her lies, condescension, gross, unnecessary arguments, and anger that I asked any questions and wanted to understand. See, the thing is, when Sarah says she wants to understand, she just keeps repeating, and we saw this in court. She keeps asking the same question over and over. She keeps repeating things, but then she doesn't retain the information, and she claims you never told her or gave her something. She's just delusional. Let's see, to understand, for her doing nothing other than give me an even harder time and request transcripts, then brazenly lie for over $16,000 for doing so, also from the precious resources provided from the JAC. Yes, the taxpayers that you were not. I forgive Patricia A. Cashman for being a liar and a bully. Wow, she's a liar and a bully because she set boundaries and said, I'm going to do my job with my professional judgment and knowledge that I have gained from being a criminal defense attorney for decades. She didn't rob anyone. You don't know. The judge looked at the evidence and made a ruling. She didn't rob a bank. She didn't go to the Florida JAC and take the money out of their pocket. They wrote her a check. It's not robbing. She worked for you. She worked. Forgiveness for all those who did not include me to receive my $15,000 share. What? I worked for when Judge Kraynick forced me to be my own attorney to represent myself as pro se. I actually and finally got my own discovery almost 5 years later. Filed motions all prior should have done, making them the most expensive motions ever at over $46,000 between the 3 prior attorneys, Frank J. Bankowitz, Walter E. Hobson, Patricia A. Cashman. Would they have done so when supposedly representing me? The motions would have been priceless for the proper use of the JAC funds towards ethics, professionalism, honesty, and freedom. Are you going to file a request with the JAC to fund your freedom? Because I don't think that's how they work. How are you going to use their funds towards ethics, towards professionalism? You're going to tell the JAC that you need their funds to make someone be professional? That doesn't even make sense. I honorably utilized my JAC resources, and no, you didn't. I'm not going to argue about that with her or with her letter, and moving on. And mentorship as a proactive indigent defendant of avidly defending myself, against the liars, thieves, and real villains in my criminal case. So the real villains are not the ones who took someone's life. You're not the real villain because someone passed away. Who really is the criminal? You are. You are the criminal. You are on trial. You are the one that is being prosecuted. You are the one that was judged. You are the one who was determined guilty. You are the one who is sentenced to life in prison. So that's a really cut and dry question. The JAC can hopefully include their forgiveness for them also. The JAC doesn't have anything to forgive. They filed their paperwork. They went to the hearing. They received their check. They followed the rules, and they were paid for their time, which is how attorneys get paid. JAC doesn't need to forgive them. Judge Wooten and Kraynick, she's still mad at Judge Wooten. I have great forgiveness for also in not protecting me and listening to my valid request for judicial intervention so I could properly and fairly defend myself against my charges. Yes, she forgives all her attorneys and judges for not bending or breaking the law or risking their job and livelihood to basically excuse her for taking someone's life. You forgive them for that? Nice. So I could, my charges. Instead, I had to defend myself against the attorneys, all appointed by the judge and court, against their lies and exaggerations, reasons unjustifiable. Wasn't unjustifiable because they did justify it. And a reasonable person listened and agreed. Why they were really creeping away from the battlefield and abandoning their professional duty as my attorney. Sure, Sarah. Judge Kraynick, I forgive you for not giving me any opportunity to stand at your pulpit, to stand at all, to explain the real, truthful side of the story. You don't do that to the judge, you do that to the jury, which you did get the opportunity to do, and they also didn't agree with you. So I guess we're going to hear about the jury next. I believe if the justice system, including yourself, would and should have done any vital homework on the already almost see-through attorneys from being spread so thin and simply sending an email to care about their present workload, number of clients, trial schedules already in place before throwing another inmate defendant unknowing client on the heaping unimportant pile of warm bodies. More taxpayer dollars could be conserved. Yeah, that's what you're worried about, Sarah, conserving taxpayer dollars. And less time consumed and wasted for everyone, regardless of what part they play in the supposed system of justice. My forgiveness is deepened for taking even greater time of mine away, years. It doesn't matter how much time was taken away, because all of your time is going to be spent in prison, and you were trying to drag it out. Everyone can see that. So no one was stealing time. You were wasting time. Everyone else wanted to proceed and move forward, but you dug your heels in the sand. By not caring to ask me anything about anything to understand so you could justly render your life-defining judgments and withhold any more bias and prejudice. No one had bias or prejudice. You're delusional, lady. Foremost, Judge Kraynick, I forgive you for kicking me when I was down and choking the life out of my constitutional amendments. Pretty sure they're still intact and available. Most profoundly, my sixth right to counsel as a result of my wholehearted use of my first right to free speech and being my own advocate since no one else would be, and received a paycheck for. They were working, they were at work, they were doing their job, they get paid. A novel concept you might not understand because you never actually went to work, clocked in, and then stayed long enough to get a paycheck. You probably got arrogant and snotty with people and they fired you. So, yeah. In all of my free speech experience driven letters, what experience? Have you done this before? Have you been through court before? I guess you were, yeah, for strangling someone. That's right. Only for remedy in any collaboration, inclusion, receiving my discovery as an inmate. What other inmates do you see with a big box of discovery? Because that was a whole thing that the captain of the jail and the jail attorney representation had to come to a hearing about you having this special process for having all your case files at the jail, all your discovery at the jail. It was a whole thing. So what other inmates are you seeing with their discovery? They probably let their lawyers handle it. Sorry. Defendant and client not removal of any attorneys to cause more delays or any reason to excuse you may try to force on me and have already inappropriately accused me of doing prior with your heavily insinuated quote-unquote strategies of mine to try and deflect the glaring red flags, disappointments, and true crime in and of the justice system. And all forward, I do not forfeit my rights, any of them, ever, especially my right to be bold, outspoken, and right in my real-life experiences with the legal and justice systems. You weren't there, Judge Kraynick, in anything. No meetings, phone calls, visits, and still took my rights and oppressed harder. I must now defend myself against you, praying you do not care too late as all the others, and retaliate further against me as a still proud citizen of the United States of my America, and freely, excitedly using my God-given rights to still try and defend myself, to stand all the way up, for you to remove my freedom altogether by allowing and approving my stab wound, bloody body parts, R-word, bumps, bruises, and all the rest of the beatings I endured. Okay. First of all, I am tired of hearing her say people cared too late. You don't care until it's too late. Because that kind of sounds like what happened with Sarah and George, because she didn't care that he couldn't breathe until it was too late to do anything about that. And then she freaked out because, oh no, I'm going to get in trouble for this, basically. My United States of America, Sarah, are you now own the entire country and you're the president? And then how did Judge Kraynick allow any physical abuse? He didn't even know you existed when these things were going on, allegedly going on. And what, was he in the room and he just looked the other way? That's what she's insinuating. He wasn't there. How could he have stopped it? All he is doing is hearing about it after the fact. And this is what judges do. They don't go in every meeting and listen in on every phone call and experience every action of every party. They listen to both sides and they make a judgment with the best ability that they have with the information at hand. And most importantly, with what the evidence points to, not just what people say. You can say things all you want. That doesn't mean that's what happened. And if you're saying things happen and they counteract what the evidence says happened, who do you think a judge is going to believe? They listen to people lie all day. They have a lot of experience with spotting liars. I hope you can finally see and understand just some of the pain from the extreme difficulties, obstacles, and unfairness, especially in my due process, you have added in my criminal case and life as an inmate, defendant, and client. All ... all is forgiven. Yeah, clearly you've let this go. Clearly you're not sitting there stewing in your cell about this. Okay, here we go with the detectives. I'm sure this is going to be good. For Detectives Copsell and Lowen, I forgive their demonization, lies, blacklisting, coercion, law-breaking solicitation of my case before I even arrive at the corrections department to be booked and fingerprinted. So you arrived at the corrections department with the intent to be booked and fingerprinted. You knew that was going to happen. That's what that sentence sounds like, the way that it's written. It sounds like before you arrived to be booked and fingerprinted, as if you knew that was going to happen. This can be seen in my unbeknownst interrogation video where I ask what they are doing. If you've lived in your United States of America, as long as you have, you know that they video and audio record police interrogations. Always. You know that. And I'm sure that they have it posted somewhere that things are recorded, because there's usually some disclosure statement when people are recording, but I don't even know that they have to do that. Anyway, unbeknownst to me, oh no, where I ask what they're doing, what all the pinging was during their texting swarm, while I naively sit there waiting to be arrested, which they know would happen the day before. Oh, they knew would happen the day before. For bold-faced lying on the stand to the judge in court on record, she didn't tell me to come to the station to pick up my phone. Why else would I go? I didn't even know about the surprise interrogation. Well, it looks like earlier you went to be booked and fingerprinted, as you wrote up earlier in the paragraph. It says so right here. To be booked and fingerprinted. So that would be a reason that you would go. Another reason was because you wanted your phone. That's probably why you're mad. Probably why you're mad that they're texting, because you're jealous you can't text, and you feel like, oh, they think they're important because they have someone to text. Well, I have people to text. I just don't have my phone. Why else would I go? I don't know. Maybe because you need to cooperate, because you messed up big time and you don't need to make it worse. Although her interrogation did make it worse, but I feel like anything she's involved with is going to get worse. Okay. I forgive them for also lying how the news showed up to record my walk of shame, handcuffed and confused on camera. Again, forgiving is letting go. That happened nearly 5 years ago. You haven't forgiven or letting go. Doesn't seem like it. It seems like you're hung up on it. So the news can film whatever is in the public. So you were in public. I forgive them for trying to make me lose from the beginning by starting the unquenchable wildfire of sensationalism and distortion, ignorant hate, defamation, and greed by unlawfully How is it unlawfully broadcasted? I don't understand how any of this was unlawful. By unlawfully broadcasting who they wanted the world to think I was by their schemes, learned lessons, and fraudulent strategies from the school of manipulation and taking advantage. Did you graduate from that school, Sarah? The school of manipulation and taking advantage? It sounds like a place that you've spent many a day. Why would they care what the world thinks? They're doing their job. They're investigating a case. They're moving forward into an arrest and a prosecution. That's it. They're done. They don't have any interest in what the media does or doesn't cover. I'm sure they've booked plenty of defendants and booked plenty of people in other crimes that they were called to that the media didn't cover. So I don't think they get to pick and choose that. It's interesting that she thinks that they can. How much did they make off of me and still are for calling it in? So you think they're still making money for making one phone call? What? Then removing the curtain to expose their personally twisted murdering monster? Are you calling yourself that, Sarah? They remove the curtain to expose you, and you're calling yourself a twisted monster, okay? Also, my forgiveness and greater gold. You mean, why didn't she put forgiveness in quotation marks? I'm going to fix this. My forgiveness, she loves to put everything else in quotation marks. And greater gold comes from wondering why nothing valuable in my defense was taken from my townhome, aka the crime scene, to aid in my truth, such as the butcher knife, 5-pronged garden claw, or hammer under the table together outside where George had easy access for use if I tried to leave or call for help while being held against, this is the longest run-on sentence, against my will during his rageful binges. Okay, so most people have basic tools in their home that they use every day, such as a hammer, such as garden tools, butcher knives. Everyone has a set of knives if they have a kitchen because they use them to cook. If you cut any vegetables at all or any type of meat, or if you cut anything in a kitchen, you're going to have knives. If you have any kind of tools, you're most likely going to have a hammer. And where would you keep them in a townhome? You don't have a garage, so probably in the little outside closet on the patio. So the reason they didn't take them is because they weren't evidence. They didn't point to any being used in any way in the actual crime. And that's what the CSI team is for. They come and process the crime scene and they take the evidence. Maybe you had a hammer, but it didn't have any indication it was used in this situation, so they didn't take it. I mean, are they going to remove every single item from your home, put it in a storage locker, and I guess say, oh, well, this is a hammer? It's no indication that it was used based on the medical examiner's report, but here's this hammer, and show it to the jury. So that's why they didn't take it. Okay. Or my bloody pillowcase stained from me being backhanded because I hid the magnum-sized bottle of vodka from him so you could drink it all yourself. Why weren't any crime scene photos taken of holes patched in walls and doors? Because they'd already been patched. And from what I understand, this was a rental property where people have a lot of turnover and maintenance has to come and patch and paint between each tenant. So spackle on a wall isn't really like any kind of indication of any kind of violence occurring, especially if it's already been patched. If there was a big gaping hole all throughout, on the walls, I'm sure they would have taken pictures of that. Okay. Holes patched in the walls or doors, some doors missing, knobs and all locks. George removed, cracked windows, broken furniture. Oh, locks George removed, comma, cracked windows, broken furniture, obvious, unnatural destruction in my townhome. How and why were these missed, uncared about, or not questioned, so I could explain some of my, I don't know what that word is, some of my something or terror? Terror. I bet it's terror. Some of her terror. You did. You testified and you explained all of it. You told us. And also, why are you calling it my townhome? So George didn't live there? It wasn't our home. It was just your home. And people live in various states. I'm sure the police, like going into people's homes, you never know what kind of a state it's going to be in. And when you hear, oddly, I hear a siren in the background now. You might hear it. I'm not sure. But when the police come into people's homes, they don't know what kind of state the home is going to be in or how people live or if the knobs are going to be attached to the doors or, how clean it's going to be. People live in various states of cleanliness and order, and so I'm sure to them it's like, okay, this is just how these people live. It makes no difference. All is forgiven. Oh yeah, let me fix that. Forgiven. And if that were true, you wouldn't have written that paragraph about it. Prosecutors, great. Prosecutors, Mr. J and Mr. Cacciatore, more people just doing their job. How many people has she come across just doing their job that she attacked like this? Can you imagine, like, just being, making French fries or trying to give her a coffee that she ordered, and her going on and on about you being, deceitful and negative and, malicious and all these things because you put soy milk instead of coconut milk in her coffee? Can you imagine standing there and being attacked while you're just trying to do your job because you made what she perceived to be as an egregious act against her? Like, how insecure does she have to be? All right, prosecutors, Mr. J and Mr. Cacciatore, my forgiveness is also extended for your inappropriate attributed motives, I'm thinking, for having to go through years of my pictures, videos, texts. Yeah, they have to do that. To erroneously piece together your deceitful, damning version of what really happened and who I am. There are two versions. What you perceive happened and what the evidence shows. That's what we saw in court. That's what the jury saw. After so much availability and for so long, you were finally able to make the circle fit into the square. Wow. I forgive your antics, theatricals, ludicrous comments to make sure the world got their money's worth while watching with ignorant pitchforks and burning torches, hoping for the best from you, which is my worst. Instead of dropping the mic, Mr. J, you dropped the bat. I'm not going to lie. I was sitting there watching this, hoping for the best, which was her worst. Because she's awful and she deserves it. For the yelling, finger pointing, and intense underlining to force your theoreticals and fantastics on the jury by using imaginary space adventures and fictional characters. Yeah, he did reference Star Wars. That was hilarious. To blind and bedazzle them with your far, far away from the truth dramatizations. He was just kind of like using a movie analogy that a lot of people are familiar with. Yeah, he wasn't referencing anything imaginary that actually happened. In your case. No, all of that stuff was real. In all of your pieced together productions, I forgive you most for never seeing the light in people, their human goodness, humor, and big hearts. You wake up to seek out the opposite, to condemn, to take lives in your own way. So your life is being taken now, Sarah. So prosecutors should say, "Oh, I know you took someone's life, and you did it without caring anything about them or that they were begging for their life and they were suffering. But I can see you have humor and a big heart for your blind and deaf dogs. So we should look for the good in her and not condemn her." Is that what you really think that should be done? So we shouldn't have any jail or prison system at all. In that case, we should just look for the good in everyone, even if they, commit the most horrible crimes. I don't think so. We as a society don't want you in the mix with us. We don't want you here. For the very reason that you don't see what you did and how egregious it really is. You just look at it as a little oopsie. Well, that was a mistake. Back to business. No, it's not back to business. This is your life now. This is what it will be for the rest of your life. Get used to it. You can try your little appeal you think is a great chance. Just like everything else, it's going to not go the way you think it's going to go. And you're going to be upset about it, but there's not going to be anything you can do after that. And you can write to the district attorney and your state senators and the governor and all the way up the line to the Supreme Court justice, the president. As soon as they see these letters that you wrote, they'll be like, yeah, this is a waste of our time. So congratulations on these letters that you wrote. The most damning evidence. Oh, besides the video that you took, yeah. See the good that does exist in all of us, inherently and unforced, even as the proud Mr. J stated, the kicked dog that bites. Mr. J, who kicked the dog in the first place? Oh, you did, Sarah, you. In my wisdom, it's usually best to leave sleeping dogs lie, then they don't bite. Who do you think is seeking out your wisdom? Did you write some kind of a thought-provoking book for us? Oh, she has. If you put all these letters together, yeah, she has, but it's not thought-provoking and it's not wisdom. Oh, is this almost over? Page 22. Good Lord. My gold goes out to the jury for not understanding my cracks, from being blinded from the injustice and malpractice in all of the judicial and prosecutorial errors, the very apparent violations of my constitutional rights during my case and entire trial, which caused mass confusion and dysfunction. You caused confusion and dysfunction. I forgive the jury truly. Do not attack the jury. They didn't want to have to come and do this. They had no choice. I forgive the jury truly for being weary from this confusion and dysfunction, also from being hungry and tired and wanting to go home to their families after being away from in full capacity for 2 full weeks. I understand. From this and their brash, misguided, corrupted decision, I was wrongfully judged a murderer instead of a survivor. For this, all is forgiven. For this, I can still survive and, stand tall, having an even greater, the greatest opportunity to finally be understood in the Supreme Court for my appeal. Well, it's not going straight to the Supreme Court, but she'll figure that out soon enough. I didn't lose. God just wanted me to win in a different way. Now she is the voice and mind of God. Freedom and forgiveness, heart. In the end, I forgive myself. Yes, she read this in court. All this BS. I forgive myself for all the good days. For him, at least. Yeah, none of them were good for Sarah, of course. Falling in love with a monster. And all my forgiveness. You have, let me go back and fix it. And all my forgiveness, quote unquote, that I'm pretending so I can make a laundry list of all the things I'm mad about. This is all the stuff she read in court. And here she finally asks for forgiveness instead of demanding, forgive me. No, it even isn't a question here. It's forgive me, George. Forgive me, Torres family. Forgive me, Judge. To the entire planet, forgive me. There's no question. Will you forgive me? Please forgive me. It's just forgive me, period. It's a command. It's a command. It's not a question. I graciously and humbly ask for consideration for forgiveness to be extended instead of judgment. He has to extend a judgment. He can't just be like, okay, well, I've heard all of this letter, so now I'm just going to excuse you and extend forgiveness, and you're forgiven. For reconciliation and restoration for all of us to move forward. And this is all, I think, what she read in court. Yeah. I am a survivor. She used a scripture. Protect the abused. That's what they're trying to do. All right. We're finally at the end where she sent her legal mail. And look how she addressed the judge. Mister. She refuses to give him any more respect because she, at this point, she feels she thinks she has nothing to lose from this judge. And she may not, because he won't be assigned to her appeal case, but every person in charge of deciding her appeal will be reviewing these documents. And they will see how disrespectful you are to everyone around you. All they're going to look for, I'm not a lawyer, but all they're going to look for is any errors that the court made. And I know Sarah thinks they made a lot, but that's just Sarah's opinion. That is not necessarily going to align with the law. So who knows how long an appeal will take. They are usually not in any kind of a hurry with appellate court. I'm sure they have a lot of backed up cases, so that could take some time. And apparently we're not going to quit hearing from her. She still has the family court case. She still has, you know, all kinds of forgiveness to dole out to unsuspecting victims. And I'm sure we'll be hearing more from her. Let me know what you think in the comments, and guess we'll stay tuned for more from SB. Like and subscribe.